Well, my name is Alejandra Novelo. I am a recent graduate from Cal Poly Pomona. I graduated for architecture, and last 2 years ago, I did an internship for Gensler, in which we did this project for homeless housing, and I did it in coalition with another student from Harvard. His name is Go Abu, and we created the Scaffold. We went into different homeless shelters because we had to learn that there was a different type of there was different needs for different people, and therefore different solutions.
Right.
So we went to around 3 or 4 shelters, and we learned that, at least from my perspective, I think that we learned that the most conflicting subject about this is the fact that people have different needs, and that because of these different needs, they cannot be together in the same place in order to have a better quality of life. Therefore, you have to have a specific design for these specific people. That was one. The second one was that the existing structures that we saw, and I can go ahead and start. The existing structures that we saw, they were reduced to a box type of living in which they had no natural ventilation and no natural daylighting, which by definition decreases the quality of life of the user. However, they did these structures because of time efficiency. So that was the second thing I wanted to point out. They wanted ability to construct it fast, the ability to build it while these structures that you see on the screen that are concrete, that have plumbing, that have electricity, while these structures get built, what happens to the people that are outside? What happens to the people that cannot pay rent, and that week they're going to be homeless? What happens to that? So we, my partner and I, wanted to focus on rapid shelter, emergency shelter. We wanted to focus on an in-between or a solution for when these structures get built. Here's our solution. So we wanted to present a project that it can be up for 6 months or less and then be moved to somewhere else. So the very nice thing about our collaboration with CBRE is that we in Gensler our centers in Gensler had the task to design homeless shelter that is siteless. It's something flexible, something that can be taken up and down, something that would overall, regardless of what it did, it had to be fast and it had to increase the quality of living for the user. So when we started analyzing these two things, our two of architectural solutions that drove our project was the fact that we could use scaffolding, which is a system that the city already uses when they are constructing, when they are building. And it therefore relates to the idea that if the city gives a grant to a designer or to a company to do rapid shelter, the scaffolding will be there because that's what they use for construction. So while that it's already in the process, we can use that scaffolding for our own benefits, and we can even rent it if they allow us. So we wanted to focus on scaffolding as a structural system for our design that can be rapid and that can be available and that has already been used. That's one. And the second one was we wanted to focus on materials that would increase the quality of living for the user. We wanted to show that a very, very simple decision in a design can change the experience of the space. And that's the power of design. We wanted to show that. But the scaffold represents the structural system that we're using. And since we're not using only one material in the prefabricated module, we're using different materials that bring daylighting, different materials that are available, such as plywood or regular wood. In other terms, the scaffolding is only the structural system. It's only the fact that we wanted to present it to the city as something that it's already there, that they trust, that they can see, oh, you know what? Yes, we've done this, and here are some examples. Let's use it. Let's rent it, rather than saying, hey, I'm introducing a new. You know what I mean?
That's
more
interesting.
risky.
Yeah, it's like a familiar word. It's like a familiar idea.
So basically, we wanted to diagram the current layout that we saw on these structures or in these shelters. And we saw that it was a plain box that had the services to push to the exterior and that had the users cluster in the middle. And when I say cluster, I mean their beds were literally, rat shoe boxes that were ones against each other. And what we noticed is that you couldn't even walk through an organized space. You couldn't even see whose backpack was whose, because everything was on the floor. There was no storage, there was no daylighting, it was basically as if they were watched 24/7, which again, depending on the type of homeless you're helping, that may be a good thing or that may be a bad thing. For what we wanted to do, we wanted to I don't want to explain it again, but we wanted to basically break down this current layout with what they had, and the same pieces that they had, basically break them out. And once you break them out, you generate community spaces. Once you generate community spaces, you start having natural ventilation, you start having natural daylighting.
Right.
With that, we wanted to study, again, we had no site at this point. We had an open sort of design, and we had to present it to CBRE interns who were going to choose possible site locations in which we could build this. And again, at the end of the day, we wanted to choose a design that can be built in different areas. So we were studying different possibilities in which the design can be elongated and can be stacked if possible. And with that elongation and that stacking, it can create this sort of crossings for either, depending on the site, depending where the wind flows, depending where the sun comes from, we wanted to place, this elongated structure. That's how we initially started. Secondly, we went to, once we had sort of like an idea of a unit and then a cluster, and then that cluster forming a community, we had to design the unit. And we went through different iterations for that same unit, in which we narrowed down what were the basic needs of these people. Besides what we wanted to give them, we wanted to give them a safe space, a space that had good lighting and that felt, in a good temperature. Besides the basic needs, we wanted to also give them a sense of identity, a sense of hey, I'm gonna hang my picture here, I'm gonna hang my calendar here, and I'm gonna put my backpack here, because there was none of that. There was none of that. You couldn't even, and when I say this, I say that I have to share a little story that I think it's important. I think I've told you this before, but I think it's important. And I feel like if this is gonna come out, it has to be right. This project was very important for me, and that's why the reason I keep presenting it, because this is the first time that I noticed that the government, or that the people who have the money and the people who run these things, have no idea what we do. They have no idea that if you change one bed sheet, or if you put up a window, or if you change the material of a door, you can change the quality of the space. And that's design. That's what we study for. That's what we were there for. So I needed to share that. I'm trying to expose that design is important. And I was just so surprised that people don't know what we do. They don't know. I wanted to prove, and I wanted to show that if you give us the opportunity, we can give you an even better design, that you can save money, and that the quality of living for the user was going to increase. And that's simply by changing materials, or doing that's simply by knowing design. I'm a soul activist. That's my life.
Yeah.
So
this is activism architecture.
Yes. We went through many iterations for this module, and we wanted to, again, give them a space of identity, a space that they can feel that they belong. So we gave them simple drawers. We gave them a space where they can hang their picture. We gave them a better quality space. So we settled for a module that it was a 6x10 module, and we proposed a series of components that once you are the client, once you are the person that would say, I want to do the scaffold, you present to us what are the needs of your users, what are the needs of the people you're trying to help, right? From that, we had this one living unit that is general or standardized for a for most of the people in need, not for everybody, because not one solution fits everybody. And from that, we said, okay, this is the type of service unit you might need, or what are the type of services units that you might need? What are the services that you're going to offer? Are you going to offer dentists? Are you going to offer medical? Are you going to offer just offices, or just whatever it is? Because as you might know, if you go to different shelters, they offer different services, and they will help you or aid you and direct you towards if they don't offer that, towards another company or not company, organization that offers that. So once a client tells us this is what we are helping, we sort of present different types of service units and say, this is the bathroom, for example. We offer bathrooms, we offer laundry room, we offer a small doctor's office, we offer a pet grooming, whatever that is. That is the red box that you see on the screen. And therefore, after that, we wanted to, as I was explaining earlier, that we also wanted to explore vertically what were the possibilities to, if we could go vertically, what would happen, and if we did, who is the type of user that's gonna be able to be in that second level? How are we gonna organize it, right? Because at the same time, we don't want to put in an elevator because that's gonna be expensive. So we said, okay, you know what? We're gonna make the first floor wherever we build. And again, I'm presenting a general solution, but this could change depending on the needs. So we wanted to present in a general design that the first floor could be ADA. Therefore, we added the ramp component. And the second floor would be for people that could only use the stairs, so not ADA. And thirdly, and I think this is the coolest thing about our project, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it's the fact that we used an existing system. We're using an existing system, the scaffolding, right? But we are also using an existing way of using, how do I explain it? In El Pueblo, they had this platform, right? These engineers had this grant, and they raised the platform into top of a parking lot, and they add these modules that had dorms, had administration, and had restrooms, and they had a patio in the middle. But that was all in a raised platform, so all the utilities were underneath. That has already been approved. That the city and Gensler and people have worked on it. So we wanted to propose a similar solution to that say, yes, we're going to put the utilities underneath. We're going to use the same platform system. And I believe that for me was a way of saying, hey, we can do this. Like they've done it here before. This is how we could do it as well. So again, these are the smaller components that as a client, one could pick and say, I'm going to use one floor or one level, or I'm going to make 5 levels.
And so this is kind of like it's like a kit of parts that is, you have sort of a library of elements, whether they're for sleeping or for bathroom or for kitchen or for some other type of service. Or use case. And you're just choosing from this kit.
So we have a living unit, service unit, stair component, ramp component, and scaffold system. In the living unit, we presented one living unit from the other iterations we did. We picked the one that we thought it was going to be the best design. This one has 2 entrances, or it can be 1 entrance and 1 window, and all of these surround polycarbonated sheets, which is a material that can be used in construction and that is translucent, and it gives a sense of exteriorness, but also privacy, because you cannot see through it. We had a twin bed, we had upper storage, we have a locker, again, because storage was one of the biggest issues. We had a folding shelf, folding table, and lower storage. So as you can see here, you have spaces in which you can hang stuff. You have spaces that you can, make your own. You can put a frame here, you can put a picture, and so on and so on. There's no glass. There's only polycarbonated sheets. If the decision from the client who built this is, I want two entrances, or I want one, and I want the door to be solid, and I want this to be glass, then yes, totally, because we have the space for it. But for now, we are presenting as a possibility to have to be anything, but it has to have two open and clear areas. The rest is translucent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And is that material? So the way that maybe you go into this, but I guess using that as both, it's just one sheet that acts as both the interior and the exterior, right? There's no like insulation.
There's no insulation. There's no.
Is it waterproofed or?
Yes. I'm not an expert material, but I want it to be waterproof because I don't want the users to get wet. But this polycarbonate sheets have been used before for construction. So there is a detail out there that shows waterproofing. I just don't have it with me.
And is there like an insulation value? Because I'm assuming you can't like just have this as a shelter in like winter months in colder areas, right? This is more for temperate climate year round.
Yeah, well, yes. This is specifically thinking about the needs of California. Okay. Not even like, because that's what we had an example for.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how other shelters in other states look. They might have different needs. But for our example, I think yes. And I think, of course, that there's a U value or a
like an R value, like an insulation.
An R value or an insulation value for these polycarbonate sheets. However, I don't know the number, but I know that they've been used before and they've been used in California. How can we start sort of populating this in a way that makes sense without a site? So we said, okay, the typical cluster will look as a one service unit per, let's say, 5 or 7 living units, depending on what this service unit fits. If this service unit fits 6 restrooms, then we might have around 12 living units. But we're just trying to make an average of
like a ratio.
What the service unit, exactly. So we wanted to show how a cluster will look, and we wanted to show how a shared community space will look. And basically, this is what you're looking at right now. And this would sort of look if it was real. And again, you can see the translucency from the polycarbonate sheets, but at the same time, the privacy. You can see the openings. We had to pick a site, and we had to present it the best possible way. And we picked San Julian Park, which is a park in between East 5th Street and San Julian Street in Skid Row. And it's a very significant park for these users and these types of homeless, the people that are hanging out in Skid Row. Again, I'm not an expert, but this is our humble opinion and solution for it. So basically, we lay out the site. What you can see here is that there was existing sort of like sheds, and we wanted to respect the fact that homeless people met here for community spaces or for park time or exterior time or sort of they wanted to respect the fact that this was an important place for them. And we also wanted to maximize the amount of scaffolding that we could use with these sort of like shared spaces. So we lay out our grid, and we sort of start taking out and carving out these voids that would become eventually these community spaces. We wanted to create a buffer at the very front with some sort of open and green space, not to be sort of up close to the, so that our facade is not as prominent. We wanted to make it a little bit open, but at the same time safe and secure. And we opened bigger spaces in the middle. Then we started laying out the living units. Then from the amount of living units, again, we study the ratio, and we added the service units. And this again, it's all hypothetical. It's everything can change, but what we thought, we're presenting what we thought it was best. So you would enter, and we settled this as our main entrance, because you cannot have many entrances in this type of projects because of security. So you would enter. On the left, you would have your main office, and then some living units. You have office staff. In the shared space, in service units, you have main office staff. We have a kitchen, a health clinic, and another office staff. In the open and public spaces, you have gathering space. You have vegetable garden. You have a pet area, and you have another vegetable garden. You can see the ones that are striped are the restrooms, because these are service. At the same time, they're something that they just have to be there. Depend per this amount of living units, you have to have this restroom. So we had those are for sure. Then we created sort of like a path how you could walk through the spaces. You can literally fit a tree right here. This is a
treehouse.
Yeah. True. No, honestly, yes. And
cool.
This one, see all the trees that it has. 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's not a very green area, but it has something. And again, we are respecting the existing sheds, because we know this is a community space. We're respecting these two, and we're using those to our advantage to make them dining areas. And I guess I talked too much and I had too many slides. So basically, we can see here the logistics of our solution. And not sure if you want me to go into detail, but basically we wanted to show that with design, you're not just increasing the quality of living for the user, but you're also saving money and space. So in micro scale, on the first floor on this site, we were able to fit 44 living units that were ADA, because again, we're using the ramp component and we're lifting up the floor. In the second floor, we were able to, and then on the first floor, 8 service units. On the second floor, we were able to fit 43 living units, making it a total of 87 living units and 8 service units. We kept the service units at the very bottom so that all ADA users were able to access it. And we took this module, or this sort of example, from one of the shelters we visited. It was a 2-floor shelter. The first floor was for immediate shelter, was for people that if they couldn't get immediate help, they were going to be homeless that night. That was first floor. Second floor was completely the opposite. There was people there that have been there for more than 6 months, and that they're nothing from drug abuse, but they were recovering from something, and that they were almost going to be able to be back to society because they were better, but at the same time they needed a place to recover. So there was two different extremes. One that didn't need no help at all, but they was almost there. They just needed that last settlement. And the people on the first floor that needed very immediate help, and that they needed the services near them. So that's the reason we separated that way. And in macro scale perspective, the lot size was 0.24 acres, which is around 10,450 square feet. And thus the square feet per user would be 87 living units equal times 60 square feet equals 5,220 square feet, and 8 service units times 120 square feet, which is the amount that it measures, equals 960 square feet. Therefore, the total amount of occupied square foot on site was going to be 6,180 square feet, which is we're occupying around 60% of the lot. And the lot size versus the amount of users gives 120 square feet per user. So if we would have done this math with the amount of square feet that a person or a user is currently utilizing in the current locations in the current shelters, we could literally prove that our design saves money, and not just that. So
what 120 square feet per person, based on the size of the lot? What's the current? Do you know what, like, how the current layout basically accommodates, or what the current, what the space is?
I think when I estimate, again, this was like two years ago, I'm trying to remember, but it was around 200. It was almost double the amount that we were proposing, and the quality of life was totally different. So
double the density, double the quality of life is the tagline.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know how when you're trying to build and the city tells you you're only able to build, I don't know, 50% of your lot, or in 2 floors, and so on and so on. They give you standards, right? This lot was I believe it was a LA owned, county owned, I believe. So, and CBRE again helped us find it. So we were able, if the county say, you know what, in this type of lot, you can only build 40% in for whatever reason, we could say, this is for the benefit of this area. We could say this is for the benefit of this community. And if we could present it in a better way, we had, I think, a better possibility that, they can bend some rules for us for this project to be approved. Again, this is, I don't know the amount of percentage you can build and decide, but this is just an example that if you find county-owned or city-owned area or land, I think, and you would have the better possibility to get this building approved. So this is just explaining basically what I explained before, the types of users. So the type 1 and type 2. And we didn't want to identify them with specific name because they all had different needs, but basically there were 2 different types of users that had very opposite needs. This would be a view from the first level plan in cluster scale. And this would be a second level plan from cluster scale. We decided to only make it 2 floors to keep it not, it's already, I feel, very tight, and we wanted to give them still a space of ventilation. If we made it taller, we would have covered maybe the natural daylighting. So we wanted to keep it simple, and that the goal was for the city to know that design helps.
So, and like the second floor, I mean, so the first floor still gets enough natural light, is probably, you'd sort of lose that ability to get full natural light in the first floor if you added a third floor.
Depending on where the sun comes from, depending on where the light comes from, depending on how you arrange your clusters. But there's always, I think if you go above 5 floors, then it will become more tricky. But I believe you can go up to 5 without making any risk. You just need to know where the sun's coming from and where you're placing your cluster. You're placing it horizontal, vertical, and so on.
From a structural standpoint, what's the limit typically for these scaffolding? I mean, I guess you see scaffolding built up on the side of a building pretty tall, but
we did investigate that, but I don't want to give you an answer because I mean, if somebody's out there that knows this answer, great, but I try to make the calculations myself, and I don't think they worked out. Are
there examples out there of this typology? Yes. With
I was gonna.
Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry. Go
ahead. I have those later on, but basically, when I started looking into the structural capabilities of scaffolding, I noticed that if I got into this research, I might get a wrong answer, and I said, this is not my job. I'm a structural engineer, but I know this is possible because there's examples out there. So I am in charge of those examples. So in a larger scale, once these clusters get together with other clusters and form a community, this is sort of how it will look like. And again, we chose one site, we chose St. Julian Park, but we wanted to show that to different CBRE teams that our solution could be placed in different areas. And we wanted to show, this is literally a map or a diagram that we did very fast to show where our possible entrances would be and the amount of units that you might see. Again, those are the red dots, and the white dots are the amount of living units. And you can see that even in the vacant lot at intersect within the 5 and 2 freeway, that it fits many types of sites. And this is only one floor. And it can be break it down even more if you want. It can be vertical, it can be horizontal. We just wanted to show that it can be in different sites. It doesn't have to be just one square that fits all.
And it seems like even if you stuck with a one-story format, let's say, to maybe avoid doing a heavier foundation, you could still prop up the first floor
Populate
a couple feet off the ground on like a raised deck.
Yes.
So if you have,
and that would be basically exactly, and that would be basically like El Pueblo did. That would be exactly what El Pueblo did, and it's a project that was already approved. So, why not? If this project someday gets built in one area and it gets one floor because that's the easiest way to do it, that's what it's been approved before, great. And then the next step would be, let's test it on 2 floors. So we wanted to show that this has been done before, and we searched different projects that have used a sort of scaffolding system to show this, and we saw this examples in Uruguay. This is called M4 by Francisco Mogone. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. And Luciano Lopez Architects in Montevideo, Uruguay. And it was a project that lasted 6 months. So basically our time structure for our own proposal. You can see that it was also a scaffolding system that was infilled by prefabricated modules, basically our same project. On the bottom one in Austria, you can see this was a, from what I remember, this was sort of an exposition, and it was only up for a year, but it was the same system. It was scaffolding, which was infilled with other objects.
Just going back to that, the Montevideo one, were people living in that, or was that an office?
No, people were, from what I understand, people were living on it. You can see this sort of like, it's sort of residential. You have the car, it was sort of apartments. This was a project that for me was the best because it's a permanent, it's not 6 months, and it's a huge project. It's in Brazil. It's called Humanidad 2012. From Carla Huacaba, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, in Via Lesa in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and it's a permanent structure. I believe it's a museum, and that basically it's the same. It is the same project. It's a scaffolding with infill units. This is around how much it will cost, and we presented this to Clark Construction because Gensler has worked with Clark Construction before, actually for El Pueblo as well. And they said that they were on board to build this project, and they just need a feasibility study. And after the internship, around a month after that, my partner and I went up to Irvine and presented the feasibility study to them, and they said, yes, let's go ahead and do this, and that. And that's where it ended. Now I'm here talking about it again.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I mean, I love how it's just a very lightweight, low impact, quickly deployable and portable housing solution, which really lends itself to a lot of different sites. So it's like, it could be a parking lot, it could be a park, it could be like a weird shaped irregular lot because the grid format of the scaffolding is only these 6 by 10 squares. So you can really range the scaffolding to kind of fit a range of different shapes, and really it's that, your sort of perfect temporary interim use. You've presented this several times to various city officials. What's their response?
Their response was very shocking. First of all, I talk very fast and I talk a lot. So they had a lot of questions. So their response was like, wait, are you telling me that I've spent this amount of money and that I could have saved this amount of money to do the same thing? That's even better. It was just basically that surprise. They were like, thank you for telling me that I can do this. Thank you for telling me that there's other stuff, that it's not just this, units are just, they look like shoe boxes. Thank you for that. So
it's the price. It's the price that they're
yes,
shocked by how low, how cheap, how cost effective
the amount of square feet per user. Yes, that was the most questions I've got, and I have a video that I can share with you for the actual live presentation that we did there. I think I share with you. But basically, their questions were mostly structural questions. How do you call it? Like building questions, sort of like building code questions, sort of like railings and security and entrances and general stuff like that. And then the third was, yes, the price. And we presented in front of Clark Construction, so they were able to sort of come in and aid to our answers. But at the same time, we weren't experts. We were just trying to give our best estimate based on our research. But yeah, that was most of the questions we got.
What about the service providers, like case managers who work in the current typologies that you noted at the beginning of the presentation? What were they saying about this design?
At our presentation, we didn't have any, or if they were in our presentation, they didn't ask the questions. But what I can say is that the people that would be habitating this service unit, their quality of working, it won't be as different as it will be a little harder maybe, because it's a different layout, because it's not the usual one building, one floor layout or concrete layout. That may be the challenging portion that I can think of. But if we are humans, we're able to adapt. Once we are able to adapt to that, and once we're able to know what works best, the quality of working would be even better. You would have a view of a green area. You would have a view of, possibly the outside. In comparison to working in a post office with no windows, and it looks like a jail. So
the next step is finding someone that will even just build like a prototype version of this, just to show how this translucent surface looks and sort of what it feels like to be in the space. Just to get their head around this new material. Are there any examples like that in LA or elsewhere that people could like walk into to see? Is it sort of like, does it sort of feel like you're in a greenhouse? Or I'm just kind of envisioning like a greenhouse.
To be honest, nothing comes to my mind right now.
So you need to build it.
If somebody out there knows, tell me. But yes, I would love to build a prototype to specifically test if the R values work, if because I've known that these projects, I've seen these projects before. For example, here in Tijuana, there's so many experiments with different materials that I love, like, which is something I love. But at the same time, I would love to build a prototype so I can sleep on it and say, yes, it's perfectly custom for the weather in California, or it's so cold or it's so hot, and therefore perfection the same structure that we've proposed. But at the same time, we need a budget for that and a person who is willing to experiment with us.
Yeah, because you could almost just do like 2 units on top of each other, do the scaffolding deck around it, just as like a display to say, hey, this is what it feels like on the second floor. Here's what it feels like on the first floor.
Exactly. Yes, a cluster. We could build a cluster.
Yeah. So I mean, given the sort of, I know it's based on a bigger project, but sort of the general ballpark of even just doing the sleeping units of $3,000 a unit plus the scaffolding and the foundation work, you're not really looking at that big of a budget, I guess, for 4 or 5 unit demonstration project. It's a big question I always ask. What's the most innovative thing about this housing solution? What do you find is the most unique or compelling or different that people should take away from the scaffold?
So many things. Okay, I think because I think I've mentioned most of these, and I think I'm going to repeat myself, but I think it's important. And one, and the most important one, I believe, is the fact that we provided a better quality of living. It doesn't matter if they're homeless. It doesn't matter if they're whatever. We designed helped them. A little bit of design helped them, or we wanted to introduce that we could, if they're already spending money, they could spend it better. That's what I'm trying to go into.
Right.
So with that idea, we used a system that they've already used before, and not just the scaffolding system, but also the platform system and also the prefabricated unit system, because that's also been used before. And we combine these 3 elements, and we're not the only ones who have been done this. We're not the only ones who've been presenting this. Maybe I'm the only one who's been talking to you about this, or maybe your other 35 examples also have this. But this is a combination of elements that we put together to say, invest in us. Say, government, here you are, trust us. This is the elements and elements you used before, elements of construction you used before, methods of construction you used before, and give us a chance to combine those, break them down, and put them together again, so we can show you how it can improve the quality of living.
Perfect. Well, Alejandra, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Best of luck with the next steps of bringing this innovation to life. Hopefully we can help spread the word and take it to the next stage.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you. Hello, my name is Alejandra.
Perfect.